The day begins not with haste, but with silence. Before us lies a quiet English garden, its grass touched with the silver of early dew. Somewhere in the hedge, a blackbird flaps its wings, releasing a few droplets into the air before flying across the lawn. The sky above us is pale, covered with barely perceptible traces of dawn, and the garden seems to wait almost expectantly for human hands to put it in order. I greet you, my beloveds. There is a rhythm to garden care that is never hurried. It changes with the seasons, with the weather, with the softness of the soil under your fingertips. The roses, still damp from the night, retain in their petals the scent of yesterday's warmth and the promise of tomorrow's bloom. Each bush carries stories of careful care, cuttings taken at just the right time, thorns handled with patience, flowers shaped by both nature and the gardener's eye. Pruning them is not an act of force, but a silent conversation. You listen to the plant where it wants to grow, then offer it a guiding hand. As the light begins to change, the shadows on the lawn lengthen. The day ends not abruptly, but gradually. But the light gradually fades into evening. It is hedgerow time. Tall, green, and watchful, hedges mark the perimeter of the garden, like silent guardians. Trimming them at dusk is an act at once practical and poetic. The cool air makes the task easy, the fading sun softens the greenery, and the sound of the shears, slow and rhythmic, becomes the final note of the day. Every cut is measured, every move considered, until the hedge is neat, a wall of living greenery that surrounds the peace within. The garden becomes a mirror of time itself. The seasons change, the flowers fade, new buds appear. The grass turns yellow in the heat of summer, softens again with the rains of autumn. Winter strips the branches bare, and spring clothes them again in green. Through it all, the gardener's role remains the same: to guide, to shape, to preserve, never in a hurry, always in rhythm with the changing year. As you immerse yourself in this story, allow yourself to move at the pace of the garden. Let the slow unfolding of each task become a delicate thread in the tapestry of the day. Pruning roses, shaping borders, taking a tea break, trimming at dusk. Each is a note in a quiet melody played not for urgency, but for silence. As you listen, imagine you too can find a moment of peace, as if you were walking down the gravel path yourself, scissors in hand, the scent of the earth rising with each step. And so we begin. Before we fully step into the garden, before the roses call for our attention and the hedges whisper of their need for care, I would like to gently remind you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. By doing so, you help continue this quiet story, allowing more listeners to find their way into these peaceful evenings and quiet mornings. Now let's walk together into the garden. The morning begins, as it so often does in early summer, with a sky the color of warm linen and a gentle hum of drowsy bees. Light mist drapes over the low hedgerows like muslin, and the breath of the earth still clings to the coolness of night. The garden, walled with old stone that's spotted with lichens and ivy, stirs beneath a cover of dew. At the edge of the path, the wrought iron gate gives its usual soft sigh as it opens, hinges creaking ever so faintly. The gardener, an elderly figure in a linen smock, leans a little on the wooden handle of his secateurs as he enters. His boots, worn but neatly polished, crunch gently on the gravel. He pauses just past the gate, drawing in the scent of honeysuckle curling along the entry trellis. The roses wait. In the south-facing bed, The climbing varieties have already begun to spill with faded petals, gently nodding in the still air. Their colors are muted in the morning light, dusty pinks, tired creams, the occasional mellow yellow, all softened by time and water. It is time to begin. Each step he takes is unhurried, his rhythm familiar. The pruning shears rest in his gloved hands, blades dulled slightly from years of careful use. One by one, the gardener examines the roses, never rushing, never missing a stem. The cuts are precise, just above a bud facing outward, always at an angle. Snip, pause, snip, and again. Around him, the rest of the garden whispers into life. Birds rustle in the topiary, their songs modest, unsure. A squirrel ventures down an old pear tree, scampers across the lawn, and disappears. In the herbaceous border, a snail leaves a trail of silver across a fallen petal. There is no urgency. The gardener speaks now and then, not to a companion, but to the roses themselves. A greeting here, a quiet apology there for taking a bloom before its time. The pruning basket fills slowly, layer by layer, with spent blossoms. Their fragrance lingers, heavy with memory. It is nearly noon before he steps back from the final bush, the copper label reading, Madame Isaac Pereire, swinging gently from its wire. The bed looks tidier, not perfect, but attended to with quiet devotion. The gate swings open once more, this time to let him pass through and return to the tool shed. The first task of the day, complete. The clock in the kitchen strikes 12, with a tone that echoes faintly down the gravel path. In the low warmth of midday, the garden begins to stretch. The mist has long since lifted, replaced by a soft golden glow that catches in the fine hairs of every leaf and petal. The lawn glistens, neatly mown the day before, yet slightly uneven along its borders. Inside the shed, the gardener selects a half-moon edging tool, its wooden handle smooth with use, the blade kept modestly sharp. He tests it once on a patch of loose turf just beyond the threshold, then wipes the blade on a cloth that smells faintly of linseed oil. A kettle whistles in the house beyond, but the gardener remains with the task at hand. At the edge of the main lawn, where the grass meets the gravel walk, the line is slightly blurred. Here and there, tufts overstep their bounds, whispering into the path like eager children. The gardener kneels, the edging tool poised. With each press of the blade, he re-establishes order. The motion is gentle, more guiding than cutting. The trimmed grass is swept into a small tin bucket, a quiet, rusted container that once held nails or twine. Its new purpose suits it better. Birds hop along the cleared lines, inspecting the gardener's progress as though they too are interested in order. The scent of cut grass blends with that of chamomile and thyme from nearby beds. Along the east side of the garden, the border is defined by a line of bricks, just slightly sunken with age. Here, the work is slower. A small trowel helps lift away encroaching roots, and fingers brush soil away with reverence. There is pleasure in this precision, in the art of making an edge crisp yet unobtrusive. The garden does not demand perfection, only attentiveness. The gardener hums softly, a tune without name, and lets the rhythm of the task carry him from one stretch of lawn to the next. It is not until the sun has begun to angle westward that he finishes. The grass borders now gently hold their shape, the paths once again clearly defined. From the distance, the sound of fine china clinking against a saucer beckons, the call of afternoon tea. The small round table sits beneath the dappled shade of an old apple tree, its surface covered with a linen cloth pressed earlier that morning. A teapot, hand-painted in blue willow pattern, rests on a cork mat at the center. The hostess, a quiet woman with a lace collar at her throat and garden soil beneath her fingernails, pours slowly. Steam curls in soft spirals from the spout, and the aroma of Darjeeling fills the air. There is no rush to drink. Across from her, the gardener sits with his hat resting on his knee, listening to the occasional hum of a bee brushing past a nearby clump of lavender. Slices of Madeira cake lie untouched on a white plate, crumbs from a previous bite captured by the breeze. The conversation is sparse, not by design, but by shared understanding. Remarks are made about the roses, about a hedgehog spotted near the compost heap, about the heat that hasn't yet arrived, but surely will by Sunday. The clink of a spoon stirring gently echoes like a bell across the garden. Somewhere beyond the hedge, a blackbird calls. The sun has softened slightly, no longer glaring, just leaning lazily across the garden walls. The gardener sips his tea, eyes fixed on the freshly trimmed lawn. "Will you do the hedge this evening?" the hostess asks. He nods once, slowly. "At dusk," he replies. The tea grows cool. A second cup is poured. The conversation drifts again into silence. The peace of it is complete. Before long, the tray is cleared. The gardener takes the teapot and cups back to the scullery. The table is left bare, save for a falling petal that lands near where the sugar bowl had been. The late afternoon turns gently toward evening. The light changes slowly, not with drama, but with softness, as if someone has turned down the world's brightness by just a notch. In the west, a faint blush begins to gather behind the trees. In the hedge, a centuries-old wall of yew that runs along the garden's northern edge. The shadows lengthen. The gardener stands beside the hedge now, shears in hand. Not the electric kind, but long-bladed manual ones, with handles worn smooth by time. He tests the weight of them with a few trial snips into the air, then approaches the first stretch. The hedge does not clamor for attention. It waits. Its growth is slow, its lines patient. The gardener trims in long, deliberate strokes. The scent of fresh-cut yew is strong, resinous and cool. The sound is hushed, a rhythmic snip-snip, followed by the soft rustle of falling clippings. He works in small sections, frequently stepping back to survey the shape. Not for symmetry's sake, but for something quieter, for balance. Birds settle into the branches overhead, unfazed by his presence. A robin hops from one trimmed perch to another, offering commentary in the form of brief chirrups. The sun dips lower. Light filters through the garden in golden ribbons, catching in cobwebs and on the fine hairs of foxgloves. The hedge takes on an amber glow in places, deep green in others. The shears continue their journey. At length, the final snip is made. The gardener leans back and exhales. A wheelbarrow sits nearby, half full with fragrant trimmings. He does not rush to tidy it away. Instead, he stands for a while, listening. The silence is full now. Not empty, full. Of air, of space, of evening. He returns the shears to their hook in the shed, closes the door without latch or lock, and begins a slow walk back along the path. The hedge lies behind him, not perfect, but peaceful. Night approaches, and the garden sighs into stillness once more. With the last of the day's work behind him, the gardener takes a slow walk down the shaded path that winds through the heart of the garden. It is lined on either side with linden trees, their broad, heart-shaped leaves gently rustling in the early evening breeze. A scent of linden blossoms drifts on the air, faintly citrus, faintly honey. The gravel underfoot crunches softly, A familiar sound, one that marks the passing of the day without demanding attention. The light is dim now, filtered and golden, stretching the shadows and casting a mellow hush across the beds of lavender and catmint. He walks slowly, not because of weariness, but because there is no reason to rush. Each step brings a new view, a cluster of daisies nodding gently in the border, a bumblebee resting briefly on the rim of an old watering can, a few fallen petals forming a ring at the base of a rose bush. The linden trees form a kind of leafy corridor. Beneath them, benches made of wrought iron and old teak sit empty, waiting for another quiet visitor. The gardener stops at one, brushes a leaf from its surface, and sits. From here, he can see the whole of the central lawn, bordered on one end by the trimmed hedge and on the other by the sundial, long since ceased to keep time. He watches as a moth flutters up from a clump of evening primrose, and somewhere beyond the wall, a fox gives a short bark before disappearing into the dusk. Minutes pass without notice. The stillness is not silent, it is simply content. When the gardener rises, he does so with the same pace as before, measured, calm. He returns the way he came, through the shadowed grove of lindens, with nothing more than a soft hum on his lips. At the rear of the house stands a small glass conservatory. Its panes, clouded in places by time and lime, catch the last rays of sunlight and scatter them softly onto the terracotta floor inside. The door creaks lightly as it opens, revealing rows of potted pelargoniums, ferns, and a few aging citrus trees in clay pots. The gardener steps inside, bringing the earthy scent of the garden with him. The conservatory is warm, not hot, but close, the kind of warmth that makes one move more slowly. He sets to work tidying the quiet corners, brushing dry soil back into pots, pinching away spent leaves, refilling a small watering can from the rain barrel just outside. Each plant is known to him. Some have been there for years, others were propagated more recently from cuttings in the main garden. He moves among them as one might walk among friends, offering a nod, a word, a pause. The ferns in the corner are trimmed gently. Their fronds arch over the edge of the shelf like the arms of a resting dancer. A spider's web, catching a bead of condensation, is left untouched. It does no harm. The watering is sparse, just enough to keep roots moist through the night. The pelargoniums, with their soft leaves and musky scent, respond to his touch. In one corner, a cracked teacup has become home to a sprig of mint. He lifts it, inspects the roots, and sets it back in its place. A final glance over the shelves, and the gardener closes the conservatory door behind him. The warmth lingers in his clothes, a soft echo of the greenhouse hush. Outside, the air has cooled. The first stars are faint against the blue-black sky. The sun has now slipped entirely below the horizon. In the garden, a different kind of light begins to bloom. The gardener, now carrying a small oil lantern, walks the length of the stone wall path, pausing now and then to light the posts set at intervals. The lanterns are modest, glass panes with brass fittings, each holding a small wick that glows gently in the deepening dark. They do not cast strong light. That is not their purpose. They merely mark the paths, a trail of soft golden dots among the green. With each flame lit, the garden seems to draw a little closer around itself. The roses, now quiet in the shadows, look almost like ghosts of themselves. The trimmed hedge appears deeper, more solemn, the yew soaked in blue. He lights the last lantern and rests a hand on the stone post beside it. His fingers linger there, warm against the cool of the stone. A light breeze lifts a handful of leaves across the lawn. Back at the shed, the gardener places the oil lantern by the door, its flicker joining the quiet breath of the evening. A few bats dart above, catching the insects that rise from the warm earth. The sky is darker now, and the first notes of the night's chorus begin. The soft trill of crickets, the low hoot of an owl, the rustle of a hedgehog somewhere near the compost heap. He stands for a moment and listens. In the small back room near the scullery, a journal lies open on a wooden desk beside a stub of candle in a brass holder. The gardener sits, back slightly bowed, a woolen shawl over his shoulders. He takes up a fountain pen and dips it into the inkwell. The journal is old, leather-bound, edges smoothed with handling. Inside are years of entries, notes on weather, bloom cycles, pests observed, and small victories. The first rose of spring, the return of a robin, a successful transplant. Tonight's entry is slow in forming. He begins with the date, then the weather. Cool morning, warm midday, mild evening. Then, pruned the south bed roses, edged lawn, trimmed yew hedge, tea with them by the apple tree. There is no flourish in his words. They are simple, factual, comforting. He writes them not for others, but for the quiet continuity of the garden itself, a record of devotion. He pauses to look out the small leaded window. The lanterns glow faintly beyond the hedge. The candle guttering beside him casts shadows across the page. He adds one final line. All peaceful. Then he caps the pen, closes the journal, and leans back in his chair. In the stillness, he waits a moment longer before rising and extinguishing the candle. The room darkens, the house settles, and outside the garden continues to dream. In the deep of the night, a light rain begins to fall, so soft, so fine, it makes no splash. Only the faintest hiss where it meets the leaves. The gardener, unable to sleep, sits beneath the covered porch, a wool blanket around his shoulders, a cup of lukewarm tea resting beside him. The eaves drip slowly, each drop landing in the damp earth or collecting in the broad leaf of a hosta. The scent of wet soil rises, mingled with stone and moss. Somewhere, far away, thunder murmurs like a turned page. The lanterns, though dimmed now, still flicker faintly, their glass fogged with the cool of night. He watches as a small toad hops cautiously across the flagstones, stopping to sit motionless beside a puddle. It is a time for listening. The rain has no urgency. It falls with patience, washing away the day's dust, feeding roots already softened by sleep. The gardener leans his head back against the wall. The wood is cold through the blanket. He does not mind. There is no reason to speak, no reason to move. The rain does the talking now, and the garden listens. When morning light returns, pale and silvered by the tail end of rain, the gardener returns to the shed. It is time to tidy the tools. Inside it smells of oil, wood, and damp cloth. Everything has its place. The shears are hung beside the spade. The rake rests in its wooden cradle. A coil of twine, half used, is rewound with care and slipped into its tin. He polishes the handles of the clippers with a cloth, his movements slow. There is no rush. A scuffed wooden stool allows him to sit while sharpening the secateurs with the whetstone, its gray edge slightly dulled from years of use. On the shelves, seed packets are stacked by season. Clay pots are grouped by size. He wipes dust from a cracked ceramic watering jug, its handle missing but still useful in its way. He finds a notebook, older than the journal, a record of plantings from a decade past. He thumbs through it with quiet recognition. Here, too, is a kind of garden, one of ink and paper, of care preserved. He places the book back, sweeps the stone floor with a broom made of birch twigs, and leaves the door ajar as he exits. The smell of the rain has changed, now tinged with sunlight. In the softened daylight, the garden's smaller visitors return. A wood pigeon coos from the pear tree. A hedgehog snuffles at the edge of the vegetable bed, pausing near the upturned compost fork. A cat, not his, but known to him, steps delicately along the brick path. The gardener observes without intruding. He stands near the rosemary bush, hands folded behind his back. The cat brushes past his leg, then disappears into the long grass. Near the pond, frogs plop lazily from stone to water. Dragonflies hover. A slow procession of ants crosses the base of the sundial. Life continues, not loudly, not in haste. He kneels to adjust a small border fence, his eyes passing over an emerging nasturtium and a sleepy ladybird clinging to a blade of grass. These moments are not dramatic. They are the garden's breath, its heartbeat. He spends the next hour weeding gently, moving among the beds, like one threading a needle through fabric. The birds remain close, the squirrels bold. There is companionship in this, unspoken, respectful, quietly shared. Evening returns again, just as softly as it did the day before. The cycle repeats, without ceremony. The gardener walks once more through the arch beneath the apple tree, his fingers brushing the low-hanging fruit. He stops at the rose bed. A single new bloom has opened, late, reluctant, but beautiful in its own faded way. He does not cut it, he merely observes. The garden has no grand finale, no final chord, only the lowering of light, the lengthening of shadow, the hush. The gardener stands by the trimmed hedge, looking across the space he knows so well. The lanterns will be lit again, and the tea poured. The journal will welcome another line. All peaceful. He closes the gate behind him. A soft click, a last breath, and the garden sleeps.